Hey guys, what's happening? It's Kamran Tariq joining you back from the Kast. Joined with me today is Faizan Shabbir on my right side and Bilawal Aleem on my left side. How are you guys doing?
Good, man.
Doing good, doing good. Kamran, what's the topic for today?
So, one thing that a lot of people a lot of people want to know is how can I generate capital to start a business, right? And I think that's a very important topic to address. So that's what we're going to be addressing today. We have the startup king, Bilawal Aleem. All right, Bilawal, can you tell us about the startups you're working on right now, past and previous?
Sure. So right now we're working on about 3 or 4 different projects. As we know, we're working on Guap together.
Yeah.
Tutorist has been in the works for quite some time, about 2 years roughly. And Crowd Rewards is another program that we'll talk about. It's coming out in the next 2 months or so.
Okay. So I know all of this stuff takes money, right? And that's what we're here to talk about. How do you generate capital for such a venture? How do you do it?
So where it all starts off is, I mean, you are quite experienced in this area as well, so you can relate as well. Where it usually starts off at is yourself, right? You see how passionate you are about a particular project, and then you see how much are you willing to invest time-wise and equity-wise, right? How much money are you able to put aside where it won't hurt you? You know, like, unfortunately, sometimes projects don't work out. So you don't, as the CEO or as the founder, you don't want to put aside a sum of money that's going to hurt you in the long run. So you allot a minimal amount that will get you off the ground, and then there's kind of tiers, right? You start off with yourself, and then you move to F&F, which is friends and family. You reach out to those closest to you in your circle. You present them with your idea. You present them with your deck, a PowerPoint presentation. You really break it down for them and explain what the project is. And then from there, you move on to like angel investors and all the other tiers of investors.
So should you have your product absolutely perfect before you start pitching the idea?
Not at all. There's various stages. A lot of people will even get investment when they just have an idea. You know, for Tutorist, which was my first venture, when I walked in to present to the angel investors, all I had was the idea. I was a university student, and I didn't have a prototype. I really had a flawed presentation. The presentation was full of holes. But despite that, a lot of investors in Silicon Valley, especially where a lot of them reside, they're willing to bank on a good idea. And they obviously they want to see what you bring to the table, right? Besides the idea, are you credible? How experienced are you when it comes to the idea itself? You know, if I'm
Bilawal, before we go ahead and go get to the angel investor part, let's suppose I would present to FNF, collected whatever $3,000, $6,000, $7,000, right? How do I get to the angel investor? Like, what's my point of contact? How do I get there?
So there's various mediums you can use. You know, there's a lot of free resources online. LinkedIn is a very, very big one, and Twitter is also a very underrated platform through which you can contact VCs. And what Twitter has done, especially in the past 6 months or so, especially during quarantine, it's made VCs very accessible to founders. And when I say that, I think the reason they've become more accessible, especially in the last few months, is everyone's had a lot of time on their hands. Everyone's been more active on social media.
How do I recognize a VC on Twitter, for example?
Okay, let's say I just logged into my Twitter, right? I have this brilliant idea, $1 billion idea, right? I just need the funding.
Right.
I'm on Twitter. What do I do?
Start off with Google. Okay, go to Google and search up venture capitalist. So the term is usually VC, venture capitalist firm, VCFs. And from there, once you're on Google, you can generate a list for yourself of potential VCs. You know, a lot of them will link to LinkedIn. A lot of them will link to Twitter. And for the ones that are on Twitter, once you guys are both familiar with Twitter. Once you have a certain algorithm going of other business accounts or meme accounts or whatever you take an interest in, that's what you'll be seeing. So once you are following,
so you're telling me let the algorithm do the work.
Eventually, but initially, obviously, you have to do the groundwork where you have to search up venture capitalists in locally around you. But obviously, Silicon Valley is a very big one, regardless of where you live globally. At least in my experience, those guys are willing to put money into projects no matter where you are, right?
Yeah, so like I just did a quick Google search for all those watching, and I already pulled up like 10 venture capitalists near me. I can just go ahead and giving them a call, present my idea, set up a meeting, stuff like that. So very easy, very practical.
So as you mentioned, what you said is with the Tutorist meeting, when you're presenting angel investors, your presentation was full of holes. Why did they invest in you?
The reason they invested is twofold. One is that the more you speak to investors, the more you realize that a lot of them want to have a lot of money to invest. So what generally happens is that you first need to approach investors. You'll have a wide pool of investors that you make a list of. Okay, let's say you have 10 investors. Of those, each of them are obviously very wealthy. They're in the technology space, but then you have to center down on investors that are familiar with your area of your project.
Your niche.
Right, of the niche, right? So with Guap, for example, we would need, it would be nice if we approached, and we have approached investors that are specialized in the service field.
Yeah.
For Tutorist, I had to approach investors that were familiar with education, with the education system, with tutoring, and that they had a passion for. So with a lot of the investors that I approached, they had families, they had young kids, they had kids in high school, and they knew about the problems that exist. So unless your venture capitalist or your VC really believes in the idea, they're not going to invest in it. But again, you can walk into a presentation with just an idea, but just because your VC is passionate about it and they bring something to the table other than just money, they bring experience and they bring knowledge about that particular industry. In this case, education or tutoring, or in the case of Guap, the service industry, right?
Perfect.
And obviously, as time goes on, like you have your first startup or your first presentation. The one thing to remember is never be discouraged or demotivated. Like, you can walk into the first 5 or 6 VC presentations with confidence, and you may not, find success, but that 6th, 7th, or 8th presentation, over the course of those months or years, you will improve your presentation, right? You will improve your credibility. You'll maybe eventually have a prototype or a full product that you can offer, and you'll be able to demo that in the meeting or presentation.
How do you, and let's suppose it doesn't, how do you keep credibility over there, and how do you make sure that the investor may work with you again?
I think the best way to do that is, even in a failed project, is to show him what came of it, right? Obviously, if you've taken on investment, and over the course of a year or 2 years or 6 months or however long a project is, obviously there's different iterations, right? So over the course of that project, it's important to show them milestones. And even though the end result wasn't what was desired, what happened over the course of those 6 to 12 months, right? Financially, in terms of marketing, in terms of outreach, in terms of a brand, what goodwill came out of that money that was invested in. If you can show them that, hey, even though the project wasn't successful, this XYZ is what came out of it, you can walk away with a lot of credibility. So in the case of Tutorist, or in case of a project that might not give you the results that were expected, you can see that, a brand was developed, a lot of goodwill was generated, a lot of marketing was done, and you had a final product, and a team was built. So you know that for future projects, if you were to work with that investor, you know that, okay, this individual or this team is able to come together and they're able to put something together, right? Something or the other. Yeah, and a lot of stuff is trial and error in this industry, or any industry for that matter. You have trial and error, it doesn't work out, but then you learn from it and you make sure to fill those holes or gaps or whatever went wrong in the next project. And eventually you're aiming for perfection. So the goal is that eventually you make something that, knocks everyone's socks off.
I got my investor on board. They're like, okay, fine, perfect. I want to invest $5,000, whatever it may be. What's the next step? Obviously, you have to make a contract of some sort, I'm assuming.
Of course, yeah. Everything should definitely be in writing. That's a major key. Where regardless of lawyers or something that you need to incorporate into your project and plan very early on, prior to approaching investors, prior to approaching your other team members, potential team members, because when it comes to dividing up equity, when it comes to incorporating, a lawyer plays a big part. And even when picking the right lawyer, you need to make sure you pick someone who's very experienced. And specifically, if you're working with startups, there's startup lawyers. There are lawyers that specialize in startups, and then if you want to zone in even more, there's lawyers that specialize in tech startups, and they'll help you in the long run, because they may be not only able to guide you when it comes to incorporating and dividing up equity, but also in networking. Obviously, they're an experienced lawyer. They've worked with a large number of people. They're able to refer you to developers and for technology, and to people that may help you on the accounting and finance side and on the marketing side. So approach a lawyer, and then from there, preferably before you land that equity or secure that investment, it's important to start to build your team, because as much as people may want to be a one-man show, it's not impossible. It's not possible.
Yeah.
That goes for any. That's like a podcast on its own. Having the right team and picking the right members.
Yeah.
But you need to have someone who specializes in all areas. Marketing, accounting, finance, development. A big one in this case. So you pick your people correctly, and then you go from there, right?
Speaking on development, right? The thing that was successful for us on a different project called Guap was using a company called Infinity Solutions. It's based out of Pakistan, right? And they really helped us build Guap whatever progress we made, upped it, and gave us a model that worked out for us. So I just want to shout out links in description. Remember that.
All right, Kamran, let me ask you. You're pretty good with finding people for your team, right? Like Bilawal said, you have to create a team.
That's right.
How do I go about finding a team? Like, how do I make resumes?
The thing is about recruitment is one thing that people overlook is they want to recruit overnight, and it never happens overnight. You have to remember names and faces, right? People you've came across, they might be good team members, or you might give out applications. Hey, I am looking for team members with these qualities, and don't be afraid to reject people in interviews, right? People are usually they end up with a bad team member, right, because of a simple HR mistake where they could have kept interviewing, but they came up to the first candidate. He was good enough, but not the best candidate for the job, and they end up putting that candidate there, and that ends up slowing down their progress in the long run.
If I could just speak to that point, especially when it comes to hiring the right type of person, oftentimes there will be people that when you interview them the first or second time you bring them on board, they may not mesh with your team. So it's very important to be, especially in the leadership role, like you can definitely relate to this, to be able to know when to say no and when to let someone go. Because if you're not able to do that, all that does is that prolongs bringing on someone who's a better fit for that role. And I think it's a reality of any career that not everyone is fit for every role, right? So there will be times where you have to become comfortable with letting people go, bringing new people in, and maybe especially for critical roles, you may need to do that multiple times until you get the right fit.
But but burning bridges is not the right way, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're letting someone go, or you realize you've made a mistake, right? Make the other person understand that, hey, what we demand is a little bit different than what you bring to the table, and that's totally fine. Make sure that that person is taken care of, well, right? When you leave him, if he's owed any equity, make sure that you discuss on that matter the first point, right?
But it's very possible that person may be a better fit for another project in the future, or a completely different role in the same project, right?
100%. Or the personal situation of that person might not meet the team's expectations, right? So in any case, there's no point of burning bridges.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So you got investors on board, you got a team, you got the app running, right? Or the software technology built. What's next? Marketing. How is that done?
How's marketing done?
Yeah,
that's a very vague question, but I'll try to answer as best as I can, because marketing has a lot of different facets to it. You have public relations, you have media relations, you have the overall, running ads and getting sponsorships from different influencers. So depending on what kind of product you're releasing, in this case we're discussing apps, all of these apply. You need a good marketing team that can hit social media, right? Social media, you can't really sell anything these days without social media, right? You need to be able to hit the right media outlets. Because media is sort of like the free way to get your message across, right? You need to be able to reach the right audience, because not every influencer that you reach out to, not every area that you target when you're marketing is going to be the right fit for you. So oftentimes what happens is that on many teams, you either have a team that is very technology focused or very business focused. So for the teams that make a stellar product, and it's an elite product, it works well, it does everything it needs to, they may not do the marketing well, and in the process they end up wasting a lot of money. Why? Because they'll have a big budget. They're able to go and spend 10, 20, 30 grand on marketing, but they're not spending it in the right areas.
I remember when Tutorus was being released, or it was about to be released back in a couple of years ago, right? And I remember, Bilawal, you specifically did especially a phenomenal job getting on different interviews with different news channels, right? And promoting that product. How did you get that done? If someone wants to get that done, should they reach out to you? I know you run a marketing company here. What's it called?
Shout out Part of Medium.
Part of Medium. Part of Devs or Part of Medium?
Part of Media.
How does one reach out to companies like yours?
So the way to, obviously, Google, right? So the way to do that is actually twofold. One is obviously to make a lot of noise on social media, right? You have to use all your hashtags, have someone who knows social media in and out. You see the biggest brands and the biggest politicians even.
Before we go forward, Pardon Devs, also a link in description.
Yeah.
Wait, what social media do you recommend? What's the main social media that everyone should use to market there?
To be honest, that depends on what kind of product you have. There's a lot of different age groups that are on Facebook. There's a lot of different niches that are on Instagram and Twitter. So it all comes down to what kind of product. So Guap, for example, we would be using Instagram and Facebook especially, not Twitter. TikTok too. I think TikTok applies to every industry. So I think it all depends on what kind of product you're putting out, because different social medias cater to different age groups and different niches.
And what is the budgeting? That's what a common question that everyone asks me. Hey, Kamran, how much budget should I spend on, for example, Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, for example?
It all comes down to how much money you're willing to put out. You can spend $1.
Is there any percentage?
No, not really. Not really. You can spend $1. You can spend anywhere from $1 to literally thousands of dollars on marketing, right? It all comes down to how many people how many people do you need to reach, and how fast do you need to do it, right?
Makes sense.
And obviously the branding plays a big part as well. You can't just spend X amount on marketing but have a brand that's not so well. Both go hand in hand. So you need to have both a good brand, a good campaign, and then you need to be able to spend on marketing and pushing that campaign or that brand out.
100%, yeah.
All right, guys. So you've reached the stage where you've got your investors, you've got your product, you've got your team, and now you're already pushing it on social media, marketing it. However, you might market it, right?
Yeah.
At this point, you're in the green. You're in the clear. You're making money. You're having a successful business.
Yeah.
And that's how you reach investors.
Perfect. So thanks, guys, for joining in the cast. Again, it's Kamran Tariq signing off with Faizan Shabbir and Bilawal Aleem. Thanks.
One last thing we just want to put in there. We're trying to reach 100 subscribers across both of our YouTube accounts. Once we reach 100 subscribers, we're going to be doing a $100 Uber Eats giveaway. So you can subscribe to both accounts, and you'll have 2 entries to win that giveaway.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe to this Kast channel, and you like and subscribe to the other vlog channel. It's called Kamran Creates.
All right, guys, it's been real. What's the show called?
It's called The Kast with a K. Thanks, guys.